Hi, I've decided that I'm going to do a video series to answer a lot of common questions about the therapy process. I understand that a lot of people have some questions and that causes some anxiety about going to therapy. So my hope is that I can clear up some of those questions and hopefully people will feel less anxious about going to therapy if it's something that can help them. So if you have any questions that you would like answered during this video series, you can put that in a comment down below the video if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can go to my Facebook page, Nikki Ditch LMHC, Counseling and Mental Health, and you can put a comment there asking for the question to be addressed. I would be really happy to do that. So the first question that I want to answer has to do with confidentiality, because that seems to be the most common question, understandably so. People ask, what of my information can be shared with other people? And so it's important to know that for the most part, everything you say in therapy will be held confidential. However, there are some exceptions that you should know about. I always tell my clients that if I have any reason to believe that they are going to hurt themselves or somebody else, then I will need to call 911 and have them taken to the hospital to get checked out. That is considered a mental hygiene arrest. It's not the same as being arrested for criminal issues, but what that does mean is that if that happens, where I would have to initiate an MHA, as we call it, then you would not have a choice. You would have to go to the hospital. You don't get to sign off. That doesn't mean that if you were to say that sometimes you wish you didn't wake up, or sometimes you wish you were dead, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go right to the phone and call 911. What that means is that I or your therapist, whoever your therapist is, would have a conversation with you and would really need to be confident that you're not going to hurt yourself when you leave the therapist's office, or you're not going to hurt somebody else. Usually that would happen if you have some sort of a plan or some sort of intent to follow through with that plan. But sometimes an MHA does happen even without the plan or intent, but it has to be more than just some passive thought. If you have any thoughts along with either plan or intent to hurt another individual and you name that other individual, then your therapist will be required to warn that other person so that that other person can protect themselves, and would also need to call 911 to have you taken to the hospital to be checked out for safety measures. If your therapist has any reason to be worried about the welfare of a child, or has reason to believe that an elderly person is being abused, then that also requires a phone call to authorities and child protectives, adult protectives, so that the person, the vulnerable person, can be cared for and safe. And so that phone call needs to be made within 24 hours. If your therapist has any, actually the phone call needs to be made right away, and then a written report needs to be made within 24 hours if the therapist thinks that there's any reason to be worried about the welfare of a child. For my clients, for the most part, I do my very best to let my clients know if I need to make a phone call to CPS, or if I need to make a phone call to 911. I don't like to do that by surprise or in secret. However, there are some times when I'm not able to get in touch with my client. Either their voicemail is full, their voicemail's not set up. If I don't know right away when they leave the office that I need to call CPS. So I do try to call and let my clients know. However, I only have 24 hours to do the written report, and I have to do the verbal right away. And so it's not always the case that I can let my clients know that I need to make that phone call. Another time when confidentiality can be broken is if you give your therapist permission to talk with other people about your care, and that would be like your emergency contact, your significant other, other family members or friends that you're comfortable and you trust, in the event that the therapist would like to talk to that person for additional information, or if that person would like to contact the therapist due to concerns. If you have a psychiatrist that you're being treated by, those are situations where the therapist would most likely ask if you would sign a consent so that information can be shared. Also, if you've had previous mental health care, we would probably ask for a consent so that we can get records of at least your assessment and your discharge summaries, so that we can understand what the issue was at the time and what interventions were helpful and what were not. So for those situations, it would be your choice if you want to give consent, and you could revoke that consent if at any time you felt the need or desire. Another time when your information can be shared is if an insurance company is paying for your mental health treatment. They do require that there's proof that you meet medical necessity for treatment if they're going to pay for your treatment. And so there are times when they'll request information about your care, and they are entitled to know that information since they're paying for your care. If a judge were to order your therapist to testify, if your therapist was subpoenaed or her records or his records were subpoenaed, then that would be another time when your information may be shared. To the very best of the therapist's ability, the therapist tries not to give detailed information about your sessions. However, it is the case that a judge could order information to be shared, and if that happens, then the therapist does have to follow the judge's orders. I think that pretty much covers it. And if I didn't make anything clear, or you have any other questions, feel free to jot the question down below or on my Facebook page. And hopefully through this series, I'll be able to answer most questions that people have about therapy. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.